Hey, welcome back to our journey going through Passion Week. Now, we began this journey yesterday as we looked at the triumphant entry of Jesus into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. And then we looked at that Monday when Jesus would go into the temple and he would overturn the tables there and he would drive the merchants out. Jesus, as he goes to the temple on Monday, is filled with righteous indignation, with anger. And he would make that declaration that my Father's house is to be called a house of prayer, but you've made it into a den of thieves. And so as he overturned the tables and as he drove those merchants out, he caused the religious leaders, especially Annas and Caiaphas, the high priest. One has retired and his son-in-law has taken over. It's a position, by the way, that they had probably purchased. They didn't earn the right to be the high priest. Out of righteous and holy living, they bought their position. They're the ones who are selling the lambs in the temple. They're the ones who is getting a fee for the vendors that's there, the doves that are being sold, the trinkets that is there, the food that could be purchased. And they're making money off of everything that's sold. And then the exchange of money, because my money that I would come into the temple with for the temple tax would be considered unclean, and so it would have to be exchanged for clean money, and there was a fee that would go along with it. And so Annas and Caiaphas and the religious leaders were making money, and now the money is gone. Jesus has driven out the merchants. And you would think, Jesus understanding that these men are angry, they've offended, that Jesus wouldn't go back to the temple. But he does. And he begins to teach a series of parables while he's there. But certainly if Jesus was going to go back to the temple and now teach, he's going to teach the feel-good sermonette. He's going to tell the how to have your best life now parable. How to look at having your purpose-driven life. 5 ways to be religious like the Pharisees are. 10 ways to be holy. 10 ways to take joy in life. You would think that would be the type of sermons that would encourage and build up and maybe diffuse the anger of the Pharisees, the religious leaders, but that's not it. It's not what Jesus does. He preaches through a series of parables, and you can follow along or read along later, but it begins in Matthew 21. The first parable is a parable of 2 sons that's there. Begins in Matthew 21, verse 28. A dad goes to his children and says, I need you to go out and work. One says no, immediately disobeys. I'm not going to do it. Another one, finally, after delaying, goes out. You've got a second parable that's there. It's a man who owns, a landowner who has a vineyard, and he's leasing out his land, and part of the contract is that he would get a portion of the harvest. Harvest time has come. It's time for him to come and get his portion, his percentage of what is due him. And he sends out his servants to get it, and those who are leasing out the land kill his servants. He sends out another group, numbering more than the first group, to go and get the fruit, and they're killed. And finally he says, I'll send them my son, and surely they'll respect my son. And then they kill the son. And then there's the third parable. It's the parable of the marriage feast or ceremony, celebration. King is having a wedding celebration, and he tells the servants, go out and get those who have been invited, tell them it's time for the celebration to take place. And those that have been invited don't come. They have places to go, people to see, things to do. In the parable that Jesus tells, he says, go out and to the servants, go and get all those in the highways and the byways and then bring them in. And it doesn't take long as Jesus is teaching. It's the religious leaders that are there, it's his disciples, and those who are coming into the temple to prepare for Passover. Some say maybe even thousands have come in and out while Jesus is teaching these parables. And it would not take any of them long to realize that the Pharisees, the religious leaders, they're the ones that Jesus is talking about in the parables. The religious leaders, they're the disobedient children. It's the religious leaders who've killed the landowner's son. It's the religious leaders who refuse to come in for the marriage celebration. They're the antagonist in the story. And you can sense, can't you, if that was you were there, that there would be some anger, some tension that's brewing now between the religious. I mean, it's already started on Monday with the temple cleansing, and now it continues on with these parables that are being taught. There's this tension that's building against the religious leaders, or between the religious leaders and Jesus, and so they talk amongst themselves and they try to trap Jesus and asking questions, and each time Jesus evades the trap. And then finally in chapter 23, everything comes to a head. There's a series of woe. There's 8 of them. 7 out of the 8, Jesus would use this phrase, woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites. 23, verse 13, but woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, and hypocrites. And then in verse 14, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites. Verse 15, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites. You see a pattern developing? In verse 16, he breaks the pattern just for a moment. Woe to you, blind guides who say. And then you get to verse 23, and he goes back to the pattern again. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites. Verse 25, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites. Verse 27, woe to you, and this is the last one, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites. Jesus is confronting the religious hypocrisy of the spiritual leaders at the temple. You scribes, you Pharisees, you hypocrites, you who say one thing but do something else. How many of you grew up with that old saying like I did? Don't do as I do as I say do. It's my stepfather. That's what he told my stepbrothers and siblings and half-siblings, that don't do as I do as I tell you to do. That's how many of us live our life. Don't do as I do as I tell you to do. We say one thing, but we're doing another. Could it be? Could it be? It was a hard question to ask, and I would imagine a harder question to answer, but could it be that 2,000 years after Jesus would confront the scribes and the Pharisees and the hypocrites on Holy Tuesday of Passion Week, that 2,000 years later, on Holy Tuesday of Passion Week, that Jesus is confronting still? Could we be the hypocrites? Could we be the ones who are saying one thing but doing another? Could we be the ones who, on the outside, everything looks good, but on the inside, there's uncleanness, dirt? On the outside, we look alive, but on the inside, we're like the whitewashed sepulchres. We're dead. Could Jesus be, even now, confronting the hypocrisy in our own lives? Tension's building. It's growing in the life of Christ. Has been for decades. It's leading up to something, to his crucifixion. And can we, just for a moment, feel part of that tension, heaviness, weight that Jesus is under right now? Hey, will you join me tomorrow as we continue our journey through Passion Week? It's called Silent Wednesday. The Bible doesn't have a lot to say about tomorrow, but I would tell us don't let the silence of the Bible about Wednesday cause us to believe that there's inactivity. There's a lot that's going on. That maybe this has been in the works for a while. Maybe the religious leaders have been hearing about Jesus over the last 3 years, heard about his miracles and his teachings, and they've been plotting his death maybe for years. Certainly by the time that Monday comes around and their money is being deprived of them because of what Jesus has done in the temple, surely their anger is then launched them into this plan to kill the Messiah. And so what we find tomorrow is that they find the one, Judas, who betrays him. And so tomorrow we'll take a look at Judas, and we'll take a look at the betrayer, and we'll take a look at the reasons why Judas would have betrayed the man that he had been following for the last 3 years. Hey, join me as we continue our journey through there. We're on our way to our Good Friday service. I hope you can join us. Love you. Love you more than you know.